do my best. My name is Douglas Welton. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Einstein's Legacy 2.0. That means the first one crashed and burned. You can drop me some email if I say anything that's interesting to you or you might need to follow up on, or you can check out the website, do the social thing with me on the About Me page down there so you can find other stuff that you need to find. Today, I'm going to talk about post-mobile computing. And how many of you have ever predicted the future? Yeah, accurately. Well, there's some caveats that go along with that, right? So we'll talk about some of those caveats today because I will make plenty of those. And also, we'll talk about the elements of post-mobile computing as far as I'm concerned, which is not an all-inclusive list, but hey, you got to start somewhere, right? So, you guys have probably heard this quote before. I think that there is a world market for about 5 computers. Do you guys know who Thomas Watson Sr. is? IBM, a little company, didn't do much. But this was 1943. So let's put that in perspective. At that time, there might have been 5 computers in the entire world. So, Thomas Watson Sr. gets a little bit of slack in calling the shot. Also, no one can actually find a citation for when he actually said this. So it's associated with him, but you don't find a speech or some letter that he wrote to say that. I predict that the internet will go spectacularly supernova, and in 1996, catastrophically collapse. Robert Metcalfe. Do you guys know who Robert Metcalfe is? Anybody ever plug in your Ethernet thingy on the side of your computer? That would be him. He brought that. But in 1996, the internet was going to collapse catastrophically. How'd that work out for him? There are 4 of these slides, by the way. And somebody that, I was restrained. I did not get the photo where he's going like this or gets hung out. Steve Ballmer is a nice guy, I'm sure. But there's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. And then the next sentence was, no chance, exclamation point. So, the point being, predicting the future. What we know is this. Computer eras come and they go. When we're in a particular era, all the folks that are there seem to think that their era is the last one and all the evolution in computers has occurred and they are the product of it. It is over. What we also know is that computer eras come and they go. That we are not the last in a line. We are one link in a continuing line in terms of computing. So, what is post-mobile computing? I've got to take, I can't stay up there. So, I don't have a fancy definition for you. I think that there are a collection of changes that are going to occur that are going to contribute to what we see as the next era. There won't be somebody standing there with a sign they raise and say, hey, we're in the post-mobile computing era. Afterwards, we will have kind of figured it out, and we'll say, hey, that's post-mobile computing. The list that I have of topics that I'll talk about is not all inclusive. You guys may have some, and at the end, what I'd love to do is just kind of get some feedback from you in terms of what you think post-mobile computing is all about. So, with that, we shall begin. Post-mobile computing is fully charged. Anybody got a phone in the room? Take it out. Let me know what the charge is. Check your phones. Anybody? Anybody at 100%? 22? Who's got the low? We got 22 for a low. Anybody got anything below that? Whoa, scraping the bottom of the barrel there. And we got 100% up here, right? But during the day, let me pose the question this way. Have you ever gone an entire day without looking at your phone to see what the percentage of the charge was? When was the last time you did that? Was it before you actually had a phone? The day it ran out, right? And that's one of the things about mobile computing devices. You probably do the same thing with your tablet, right? Unless it's like a Kindle, which stays good for like a year and a half or something. It stays good for an awfully long time. But that's another thing to talk about. Here's a scenario for you. I want you to tell me if this rings true with you. You have a busy day, you use your phone, you go home, have some dinner, you get ready to go to bed, you take your phone, you plug it into the charger, which is always stuck in the wall, right? And you sit it on the counter, beside your bed, wherever. Your phone charges up the next day. Rinse, repeat. Is that a typical scenario? Am I missing anything there? Let me re-envision that scenario for you just a second. You had a nice day, you walk around, you do a lot of running around. You come home, you take your pacemaker out, you plug it in, you charge it up, you get up the next day, lather, rinse, repeat. Why don't we tolerate that recharge cycle with pacemakers? And we tolerate it with phones or mobile computing devices. The pacemaker's sort of mission critical. Okay, that's one thing. I got something up here. Nobody ever died in their sleep. One back there. Oh, it only has one function. All right, that's true. Oh God, somebody getting technical. The current draw on a pacemaker is significantly less. Power is power. There are three reasonable numbers, right? 0, 1, and infinity. If you need a little power, you need a little power. So the question is, how many of you would buy a telephone if it had the same recharging characteristics as a pacemaker or any mobile device? My father-in-law has a pacemaker. I think in 10 years we get to change it, you know. But those things, you know, they give them to you late, so you might not get to the end on that one. But it's true. Do I lie? Anyway, but the whole notion is, would you buy a phone that you didn't have to recharge? Would you buy a tablet that you didn't have to recharge? If someone came on the market with one of those in 2 weeks, would it not kill everything that was out there? I think it most certainly would. One of the issues is, you know, we're all very conscious of battery life. Who's developed software for a mobile device? Who's got an iPad, Android app? When you build software for a mobile device, you have to make compromises, right? Because some of those things might not always be on. We make a whole bunch of compromises to save power. This is the list that I got on how to extend your battery on your iPhone. Listen to some of these things and see if they don't compromise your software. Disable system location services. Turn on the auto bright, reduce the screen brightness. Turn Bluetooth off. Turn 3G, 4G off. Keep your Wi-Fi off. Turn data push off. Don't fetch your email very often. Put the auto lock on sooner. Turn the equalizer off. These are things that somehow hinder the quality of your mobile experience. There was a company called Looped, and they've disappeared since then. I think they were bought. But their slogan was, "We were your social mobile compass or mobile social compass." And in order to be a social compass that's mobile, you got to know where you are. So if your location services are turned off, how's that going to work out for you? So those are things that you have to think about in terms of compromising your software. At the same time, not only do we have more use that we're making of our mobile devices, but we have bigger and brighter screens. Remember, have you ever seen like a regular old cell phone when the screen was like, you know, a postage stamp? And then, you know, have you heard the expression pad hole? Do you guys know what pad holes are? They're the people that are taking a picture with their iPads, right? Pad may be a substitute for some other word, I'm not sure. But that's a big display, right? The battery's going to need a little bit of juice for that. You know, they're bigger, they're brighter, they're better. And we do more things. On the old cell phone that was, you know, postage stamp size, we didn't spend much time playing, you know, Temple Run. That's kind of the way that worked. The question happens, what happens when you can build software that doesn't have compromises? I mean, people try to think, oh, we're always connected to the internet, right? But if you've got a truly mobile app and it's on a mobile device, that device may have location services turned off. Wi-Fi may be turned off. You may not really be all that connected that often. What happens if you are connected that often? Does the world change? Can you make different software? Those are the things that happen in the post-mobile era, and those are the things that we have to check into. Now, to be sure, battery technology, there are a ton of battery startups. Anybody in here a battery freak? No? One? Yeah. But if you want to get into new battery technology, there's a ton of it out there, new materials. I saw magnesium ion batteries. Who knew, right? There are different ways to charge batteries. You know, the magic is you come in your house and you just sit the phone on top of your countertop, right? And it magically charges from there. The question in my mind is it a battery issue or is it a power issue? Because a lot of people may solve the battery question, but the mobile situation is a power issue, as far as I'm concerned. Now, let's talk about the post-mobile world, and I call it multi-screen. And let me define multi-screen for you. That's using 2 or more computing devices, either sequentially or simultaneously, to engage media content via the internet. Thank you, Google, for that definition, right? And notice there's something in there, media, media content. After all, Google is an advertising company, right? All right, when we talk about being engaging, how many people have done this, had this particular situation? You're on the train, you're on the bus, you're fiddling around, you go to Amazon, oh, there's a book I like, right? Whatever. You kind of put it in your, your cart. You go home, you look at your spouse unit, and you say, hey, do you need anything from Amazon? You get the bunch of stuff that you've all now decided to get. You go to your PC, your laptop, whatever, you buy the stuff, right? It's pretty easy. But it started on your mobile phone or your pad, and it ended up on your PC. Here's another situation. You're sitting there, you're watching a movie. It's a strange movie. It's late at night. The title of the movie is Kiwi Child. You look at the movie and you say, that guy looks familiar in that scene. Is that the guy that did the talk up at Skookum the other day? And you go to the Internet Movie Database, and it confirms that I indeed was in this movie. Who knew? However, if you are watching that movie, I feel sorry for you. One of my friends actually bought the movie. That scared me more than anything. But that scenario, the laptop sits in front of the TV at my house. Why? Because I know that guy. He was in something. We all do this, right? At the end of the commercial, it's got, a website. We go check it out immediately afterwards. That's what happens a great deal as far as, in terms of media engagement. We are using multiple devices to figure this stuff out. It makes us all feel more empowered. I mean, when you can know everybody that's in the movie before the movie's over, you feel a little bit better, right? And there are a number of really cool things about this. Most of all, that's interesting is that search is this kind of thread that runs through it all. We can search on any device and move to somewhere else and complete that search. You're at home, you do some search. You get to the office, you do a little bit more search. When you get back home, you've found what you needed, you go make your purchase. That sort of thing. Amazon is great. It's like you go in, you say, these are the things on my wish list. When you're in the office, when you're at home, the wish list is the same. Phones are the most common starting point in this whole notion of this multi-screen world. And one of the things I think that is most important is that we preserve context. If you take a look at this picture, the reason I chose to use this picture is that it's the same image across all of the devices. How many of you make software that can be accessed from multiple locations at multiple times that looks the same regardless of when you got started and what you're doing? When you're on YouTube and you're trying to watch this video because you're waiting for the bus or the train, and you go home, can you pick up right where you left off? What if you could? What if the interaction that you have on your computer, that your company has, can be maintained across devices? That context is worth gold, and it's very valuable in terms of how you can proceed and make the economics of this whole situation work out. Oh, I know. And it's some of it's very, very easy. I mean, it always amuses me that you go to Amazon and it's like, here's the things you just browsed, right? They're all, and it's like, you may want X and such, but you can't do that everywhere. And if you could do that everywhere, if you go to the Ticketmaster site, and does it say, I haven't gone to Ticketmaster or any of those lately, but does it say, here are the concerts that you've already attended? Would you like to see where so-and-so is right now? What if you could do that? Wouldn't the engagement be a lot more fun for you? Post-mobile computing is what I call data exhausting. And data exhaust is, who uses the expression data exhaust? Is this alien to anybody? Or everybody knows data exhaust? You Douglas, you have two heads. Do you want to go, for the cute picture? Let's define data exhaust. Data exhaust is anything that you put out in a certain way. Now, it comes in three little piles. There's the primary data, that's the stuff you create, your photos, your calendar, your address book, all that stuff. It's created by you, you know it's there, you manage it. There's secondary data, which is like your history, which shows up in your browser, and other kind of usage information, so you can know, I was on, I was off, that sort of stuff. It is created by the system, but it's presented to you in a way that you know it's there. And then we've got this tertiary data that is created by the system. You have no earthly idea that it is there. Okay? And example number one. What is this a map of? Do you guys remember? This is about a year and a half ago. I don't remember exactly when. Take a guess. It's a map of cell phone towers. But it's the cell phone towers that a particular cell phone connected to. So does this give away your location? Maybe a little bit, right? But most people had no earthly idea that data was there. And as it got presented in the media, we're tracking you. We are Big Brother. We have nothing else to do except for follow you through New Jersey. All right? But this is metadata. It's a cache. Basically, it gets blown away every once in a while, but it still gets created over and over again. This is data exhaust, okay? What happens is that we are going to create tons and tons and tons of data exhaust. Everybody in here have a phone? Or you got a phone with you close by? I smell your exhaust, right? It's going to happen over and over again. And not only do you now, it used to be, you had a computer at home, it sat in a desk in an office, right? One person at a time went in and used it. But now what happens is dad comes home with an iPad for everybody, right? And so if you're going to make orders for, little Johnny, you've got to have Amazon information, billing information on there, right? It's on your phone, it's on your computer, it's everywhere. The challenge is how this data is used. I have a story for you. 2007, there was this Iraq thing going on. You guys know about that? Just checking. Helicopters are coming to land at a base. Somebody takes a picture. When you take a picture, the only thing in the file is the image, right? Just go with me on this, all right? So they shared the image on like Instagram or something. So, anybody, EXIF, EXIF data, anybody familiar with this? It contains geotags, right? So, you look at the image, you pull it down. Oh, I know exactly where that helicopter landed. Unfortunately, the bad guys were the people that pulled it down, and they destroyed 4 helicopters. It was benign. That photo you take of, yourself in the bar going, like that. You don't get bombed after that. Well, maybe you do, but it's a different bomb. But this is an issue. Would you have somebody track you by your Facebook post, because they are all tagged with that geo information? How many people used Path, the social media service a few years ago? Do you remember Path? Remember how they thought it was no big deal that I've uploaded your entire address book so I can figure out who you want to share with? All right, yeah, it was. And all of this stuff is metadata. It says stuff about you. It says, what you are, it gives people information about you. If you're an advertiser, you might love this stuff. I'm not sure. But in my opinion, mo data exhaust, mo problems, is that rap music? I gauged this for the crowd, but you're on the rap. I think that puffy guy is so cool. Anyway, I think data exhaust will only continue. Data leaks out of your devices. The more devices you have, the more data that will leak. Your friends' data will leak about you because your friends are the people taking pictures of you in the bar, right? What happens when we get to this place where everybody expects you to be available at all times? I can track you. I know, you go, there's the murder trial, they come grab you and they say, oh, you did it. And you say, no, I didn't, because my phone says exactly where I was at all given times. What happens when you turn your phone off and you don't have that alibi anymore? What's the world like? It's a post-mobile world is what it's like. The question I have is, can data exhaust be used for good if you're anybody except for an advertiser? It's a legitimate question you've got to ask. If all of this information, people want to roll this up into a big data thing. They want to make it, but we can crunch this and we can make decisions. Everything that can be measured doesn't necessarily derive meaning, give you meaning, right? So the question is, how do you use that data? And some of it's very valid to use, some of it's not. The question is, do you need to ask the user permission every time? I mean, you pop up a modal dialog box every time. Can I use your address book? Can I do this? Can I do that? There was a version of Windows that asked you popped up modal dialogues a lot. How did that work out for them? That's all I've got to say. Something to consider. Post-mobile is fast, all right? And I've got 4 numbers here for you. Do you guys have a clue as to what these numbers represent? Take your time. There will be a quiz later. It's really, really old numbers. I think it was from 1968. If something happens in 1/10 of a second or less, you perceive it as instantaneous. If something happens in 1 second or less, it doesn't disrupt your train of thought. If something takes 10 seconds to occur, you have checked out a long time ago. Okay? Jacob Nelson, you guys know Nelson Norman, the group, they do design work. He's got a post that brilliantly explains this, but I believe it is from like a 1968 survey, and this has been constant even before the time of computing. Now, the red number at the end, Google has all these delicious analytics, and they tell us that the average mobile web page takes 7 seconds to download. 1 or 10? Which one is 7 closer to? Yeah. At least one person is awake. But the whole notion being, what happens in terms of your user engaging your mobile web page if you're at the snore end of engagement? Google is recommending that you get your times down to 2 seconds. There's a Google blog entry in regards to this. I mean, I used to drive this lovely Ford car once upon a time, and it's what it was. You press the gas and it eventually would go. And then I got a sports car and I pressed the gas and it actually went at the same time. What happens if you're a user and the system responds to you? You respond to it. The experience of hanging out with that system becomes much, much better. Post-mobile is a different kind of social. And by that, I mean Kevin Ashton is this guy who, in 1999, wrote something about this concept, the Internet of Things. Have you guys heard about the Internet of Things? Basically, his whole notion is that all of the information on the Internet right now came from people, which is pretty much true. And that people have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of attention, and that they are inaccurate, and therefore they suck at entering data from the real world. As he likes to put it, humans are terrible routers, okay? What would happen if you stuck a device on everything that would allow it to communicate with the internet. That's a lot of devices, and the address space gets really muddy really quick. But it's a cool idea, because then you have lots of fun things that can occur when things can actually communicate with each other. Right now, we don't have the Internet of Things. We have things on the internet. We have this Nest device, which is great. You can talk to it. You can program it from your phone from miles away. You can do the same thing with any kind of security system, that sort of thing. But let's take this situation. How smart is your car? These are all toy cars, so they're not very smart at all. But when you get in your car, you whip out the phone, you get the Google thing talking to you to tell you to turn left or right at whatever location to get to wherever location you're trying to get to, right? Does your car talk to the road? No. Does your car talk to any of the other cars on the road? That would be good if that actually occurred. How many people have ever run into the back of someone in front of them that they didn't see them stopping? Got a couple of rear enders here? What if the car that was stopping could tell your car, hey, I'm stopping? Would the world be really interesting? What if your car could actually say, you know what, there's a dead deer in the road over on such and such, and report that back so that we could get real-time traffic information? Okay? I'm just saying, how smart is your car, really? How smart are the people in this audience? It's all women, but please don't take this wrong. I just like women. I'm on stage occasionally as an actor. When you're on stage, one of the things that the audience can do that's very smart is to turn their telephone off. I was on stage once and the phone went off 7 times in about an hour and a half. The question is, why doesn't the building tell the phones not to ring? What would happen if that did happen? You went into this to see the symphony and it simply told your phone, please vibrate here, right? How smart is your house? Well, people, the people, is it ADT Services or whatever? I guess I shouldn't mention their name. I won't talk about them now. But let's just let's just talk about some security company that might be local or whatever. They want you to think that you can have a smart house, right? You can have a really smart house. Here's the situation. You've got the Nest thermometer or thermostat that I showed you earlier. Makita makes a set of drapes that will open and close by remote control, and you can connect them to the internet, right? You've got a lamp that can turn itself on and off. You can connect these things to the internet. It's a hot day. The thermostat gets too high. You know what? The thermostat cannot tell the blinds to close, because maybe that's all you need to do. And if you close the blinds, what would happen? Well, the lights would come on. There's a spiral, I think it's called circling the drain, that happens with this. And it's great. We make a lot of things that we put on the internet to talk to us, the humans, who are the poor routers of information and inaccurate. What if the devices on the internet could talk to one another? That is the Internet of Things. Now that we have these little mobile computing devices, we can stick them on stuff and do that because the technology is heading in that particular direction. The challenge with all this is making things talk to one another. The Tower of Babel, does everybody know this is Tower of Babel? I'm just wondering if I was speaking your language. The fact of the matter is the Nest has no clue how to talk to the powered blinds from Makita. And if it did, wouldn't it have to know how to talk to powered blinds from every other company? And the question is, how do you come up with a single language, and maybe you don't come up with a single language, that all of these systems can talk to? Because the Internet of Things, when we talk trillions of things, will have paths from themselves to trillions and trillions of other things. And if you don't talk to one another, how are we going to get anywhere as far as this whole situation is concerned? Now, I believe that in the post-computing or post-mobile computing era, we redefine form. Have you guys seen this hand that I've been using? Would you wear one of those? That would be terribly painful, I think. However, we know that this is where things started, right? And here's where we are now. So, the question is Google Glass next? Redefining form. I know you're all afraid that if you put on those glasses, your head is going to become incredibly egg-shaped. I'm looking at you, Mark Andreessen. But the question is, that's a change in form. It is a serious change in form of how we interact with a computer. There's no place for you to point with your finger on these things. I think that that's important. Here's one that has no real part to it. We've changed forms again. We just have this little thing that projects on a flat surface, and it kind of figures out when your fingers get in the right place what you're really talking about. Is that going to work? I don't know. What happens when you have a UI that doesn't have a visual component? Every designer and web person jumps right out the window, don't they? But when you take a look at it, and you know, love it or hate it, Siri is there, and Siri has no visual user interface. And it portends to things that are like that have no visual user interface. How many people ride motorcycles in here? Couple. When you go like this, is anybody pointing to anything on a mouse or not? There's no visual user interface. We've got to realize that the world does not come on a display that is roughly 1920 by 1080. Simple as that. And what happens when we start designing software that interacts with things that aren't in that mode is we can do different things, we can do new things, we can't do some of the old stuff that we used to do. It just makes life a little bit complicated. Because this. Yeah, I mean, how many people are UI designers and sat in Iron Man and just were really furious at this whole user interface? It looked kind of sweet, but then you thought he has to tell it to do everything, right? He can't punch up, he can't press, he can't point to anything. So if you had to play the piano and you had to tell the computer where to put each finger, that would be time consuming. The question is this a kind of interface that you'd want? Is it information overload? What will that next form be? Can it get any smaller than our phones? Can it be a different shape than, a tablet? I contend that people wanted Apple to make a netbook, and Apple kept saying no. And they did make a netbook. They just called it an iPad, and it didn't have a keyboard. So the form changed. And in order to recognize post-mobile, I don't believe it's going to be a little... Do you remember when phones used to flip up like a communicator? Has anybody got a flip phone in here? Everybody got a candy bar phone? Because a few years ago, the candy bar phones were the anomaly. But, oddly, we had to all make our phones look alike. Who knew? Something to think about. So, it gets us to the point. What is post-mobile computing? And I'll just open it up here. What do you guys... Again, I can't touch on all the things. There are tons and tons of things out there, but I do think that there are some things that are going to occur, and we need to look for changes like this, like change in form, or quantum changes in terms of speed, or we need to look at how we are using the data that we create. What do you guys have as a notion of post-mobile computing? Anybody? No? One up here.
I read that there's one of the car insurance companies has a new little OBD2 device that will communicate with your car and audibly remind you that you're going too fast.
Okay.
It will power your phone down or block texting or things like that while driving.
People are doing lots of fun things with cars, which I guess is the ultimate mobile computing. Nokia just announced this morning that they have what I think it's called the Auto Cloud that they're going to put in cars. And, nobody buys anything from Nokia anymore, but it may work. The challenge I have with putting mobile devices in cars is yesterday I'm taking my bike to the shop to get it fixed, my bicycle. As I'm riding through the parking lot, this lady pulls out in front of me. She doesn't look. Apparently looking left doesn't work for her. And then she plugs headphones in each ear and picks up a magazine as she drives off, and one of her mirrors is missing, and I'm thinking, does this all go together? I believe that making mobile things and putting them in cars will correct itself. Okay, if you understand where I'm going with this. Ford had a terrible time with sync and how it was perceived by the customer. That is software that Microsoft made that is nice software. The challenge is you're in a car and you got to drive. That's where if your car could do some of the talking and you didn't have to interact with it, if it takes the human out of the issue, then I think that it can be very successful. As long as the human stays in there, I'm not so sure. Have one over here?
Yeah, this whole Internet of Things, like, it only exists to make humans' lives better. There's no other reason to have devices talking to each other and collecting all sorts of data unless there's a human that can go in there and interpolate the data and actually get meaning out of it and perhaps change their habits, or like the Nest, you can adjust it to automatically figure out what you like your house to be set at. So there's no point of the Internet of Things unless we can actually take that data and form it and mold it into useful information.
I would agree that a part of that is true. I also would say that the Internet of Things humans have limited amount of time. We can't be everywhere at all times. So if the nuclear reactor's getting a little warm, the Internet of Things says, hey, cool it down, buddy, right? Or if we need to do inventory management on a very gross level, let's say, then the Internet of Things can be very useful to us in that particular respect. All of the technology that we're putting in these little phones, we may distill some of it out into smaller gadgets, but I think it's very useful there in terms of communicating protocol-wise.
I would say with that example that the purpose of that would be to alert the humans so that they can investigate, well, what actually caused the reactor to get so hot and fix the problem.
I agree with you. At the end, it all comes back down to people. It all comes back down to people. I think the value of the Internet of Things is to remove slow people from the chain. That didn't sound politically correct at all. You know who you are.
At this point, it's really not an Internet of Things, it's more an Intranet of Things. It's not, the reactor's not talking to my Nest. It has no need to do that.
Well, but yeah, the whole notion of the intranet of things is great in the sense that it works inside of the company silo, inside of the walls that we define. But last time I checked, companies don't just work inside their own walls. A long time ago, I did EDI. Anybody remember EDI? Electronic Data Interchange? It was going to make the world great because my sales office could talk to your sales office, and we had this protocol defined between companies that we could do talking and share information. I think that there is some of the value in terms of, again, this whole smart city concept with your car talks to the road, all right? The police can talk to the hospital and know what's going on there, or the ambulance service can talk to the hospital and be able to provide information. The power company knows that exactly where the thing is broken, and they can alert the police, and they can alert this service and that service. There's value in that. How it gets implemented is a difficult problem.
So I see us as moving towards these gadgets, these machines, moving towards this intuition, this anticipation of what we're going to do. And we see some of it in the advertising, obviously. But to his point, there's no reason that Nest can't tell Duke Power that I'm getting ready to turn on or turn up the heat, so that Duke Power can then start to route energy to where this next massive energy is going to need to be.
That's true.
So I think, and as
Some areas
we
are
see it
already
also with
doing
virtual assistants. Virtual assistants can take 80% of the rote actions, and so much of what we do is rote. So machines can anticipate pretty well what we're going to do.
And there's beauty in that unless you put the little black hat on and you say, I will intercept your information from your Nest and know when you are going out of town so I can come take your television.
Well, it's
But-
all made for good, like you said.
Yeah. Well, I always take it, Google says, don't do evil. Hey, they didn't say anything about doing good, but Something to think about. Anybody else?
I think the proliferation of devices as it is now, my brother keeps pointing out to me that it's never added a single minute to his day. So all these things consume more and more of our time in the day.
That is true. The Earth still more or less moves at the same speed. What people like to think in opposition to that argument is you have found time that comes up because you're more efficient doing stuff. Now, you can believe that or not. You may find time in your day because now you have a device that helps you out. You may not find time in your day, or you may fill it with some other stuff. So, yeah.
I see the possibility where devices have like you pick the interface to the device rather than the device pick the interface for you. So for example, you got like a washing machine, and maybe you just want a few buttons on it. Someone else wants to be able to dial in the spin cycle, whatever, the full dashboard.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of cases where you just have to, as a user, just learn one interface, and then it expands to all the devices.
And that's great. Unfortunately, a lot of software designers missed the point on that. The sync system that was in the Ford cars had 1,000 screens. You're in your car. I just want to turn the radio up. Right? 1,000 screens. Who's the program manager there that didn't get smacked upside the head? Well, we've done a great job, and these 1,000 screens will help you drive down the road better. I'm not digging that.
What's the motivation for the lamp manufacturer to collaborate with the shade manufacturer or the maker of Nest? I mean, because you could put the cellular or Wi-Fi chip in the lamp so it can get network time protocol. You could put the GPS chip in there, and it's got a location. So you've got those two pieces of data. You know what time the sun is going to rise and going to set for any place on the planet. Now you've got additional work to try to figure out what protocol to connect to talk to those other things.
You're right, and there's not a lot of motivation for that at all right now. And where the motivation is being found is at the next level up, the people that are smelling you a smart home. And they sell you this home that you go in, they give you a little remote, and they say, this works everything, and it does whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they do all the integration at a level that's higher, and I cannot. The article I read on this, I'm trying to think of what site it was on. I can't remember at this moment. You can send me an email and I'll find it for you. Talked about, it was a vendor who basically integrated all of those things at the next level up. And he was selling you a smart home. And the question is, you go to South Charlotte and somebody says, hey, this is a $400,000 home, and you flip the light switches yourself and do all that stuff. And then you go look next door and it's a $410,000 home. And when you walk in, it automatically does stuff. And you say, wow, that's sexy. $10,000, not so bad. Maybe we can negotiate that down. That's where I think the value starts to come in that particular case.
So, one of the things that seems interesting that you're talking about is how it's almost the Internet of Things kind of connecting all of our devices, that the post-mobile seems to look like what you're saying, less touch interface. Like our phone is the one thing that we get everything to come to right now. And so in some ways it sounds like there's a lot of suggestion towards it being dispersed to other products and we just interacting with products, and somehow that keeps track of us or our choices, preferences.
Yeah. I guess it becomes more like a network than a tree, if you understand. In the tree, people here, things down there. In the network, they're just all kind of around, and every interaction doesn't necessarily go through the person. So that becomes the issue there. Anybody else?
Do you think there's a point where maybe data exhaustion will start to reduce the capacity? This is all increased capacity talk.
I think that we will create as much exhaust as there is bandwidth to create exhaust in. and it's great because we always want our phones, our mobile devices to do more and more stuff. In general, okay? When somebody picks it up, you want it to be easier to use, faster, better, whatever. And if I can make, when you get an email, if it automatically puts a calendar entry in for you, that's great, right? There's a guy that, this is a very interesting data exhaust story. What he did was he bought up all of these domains that are parked. And when people send email to a parked domain, it bounces. Well, what he does is he puts the note in the bounced mail that comes back, goes back to you. He puts advertising in it. Click rate of 2%. 20 million emails a day. Do the math, right? I mean, but a bounced email message is total exhaust. It is stuff that, I don't even know if I see them anymore, but I used to have a rule that just put bounced messages in the trash, right? That kind of stuff, 20 million emails a day. And what he wants is he wants to get like Time Warner to be his partner, right? And he's like, it's 400 emails a day from them, and he's just, and even worse, when he figures out that the mail came from a spammer, he sells that list to a data security company. People can, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Data exhaust, if you look at it as trash, somebody's going to look at it and see it's an opportunity. Anybody else?
Aren't we already in post-mobile computing? We have to give it a bad name.
It may just slide in on us. It will creep. Who knew that we were in the post-PC era until somebody stood up and said it? We kind of look back, but it had gotten here before that.
I mean, we're always, humans like touching things, so I think touch is always going to be around. We're already getting started on talking to our computers and understanding natural speech a little bit better.
Yeah.
And as far as the tablet form factor goes, that's been like the most popular form factor for thousands of years. It was, sometimes stone and other times a clipboard with paper on top of it, and now it's aluminum and glass. But
yeah, you've got a very good point there. And, again, I don't think anybody raises a flag and says, this is post-mobile computing, you have made it, life is good. But I do believe that we get to a point where we look back and we say, well, we don't do things the way we used to. Look, our web pages on mobile devices do download in 1 second. Life is good. I didn't even lose my train of thought. All right? So, again, it's my whole point to this is wherever we were is great, but the future never snuck up on anybody from behind. Simple as that. If we keep looking forward, there's going to be some new stuff out there that's going to be very interesting. And in particular, because of the proliferation of little devices that can walk around now, or move around, maybe I should say it that way, I think it'll make life interesting. Anything else? Alan Kay, the best way to predict the future? Invent it.